Today, we're going to be looking at a hunter build that I had made almost a year ago. This was during Season of the Haunted. Solar 3.0 had just came out. It was not in a good place. This was before it got all the buffs and the changes that it got, like I think 3 weeks later. This is also back when we had Elemental Wells as our build crafting system, and this was back when Shards of Galanor didn't have its new little perk functionality that they gave it this season. So there's a lot of things to go over with this build that have changed, things that needed to be changed because again the build crafting system changed, and overall it is just still a very good build, and it's very usable this season, and I want to bring it up to that standard. So of course, like, comment, and subscribe if you want to keep seeing more. Helps me out a ton, helps the channel out a ton, and let's have a quick word from our sponsor. I mentioned just a few seconds ago, today the build we're going to be using includes the exotic arms Shard of Galanor, which comes with the exotic trait Sharp Edges. Throwing knife final blows decrease the cooldown of your super. Hits and final blows with Blade Barrage will return super energy after the super ends. Blade Barrage hits and kills refund super energy depending on the enemy rank up to the maximum of 50%. This will allow us to throw our super out quite often and will be better paired with the buff that it got at the beginning of the season, which is the ability to get super energy when getting a throwing knife defeat, and it fits this exotic perfectly. When we defeat a target with our knife, we're going to get 2.5% to 5% of our super back depending on the enemy defeated. This may not seem like a lot, but with the setup we have, this will add up very quickly as we're going to be focusing on getting those knife defeats. In long activities or activities where we have high health bosses like raids and dungeon, this exotic is an easy top choice for this particular setup. Even more so now that Celestial Nighthawk got its wings clipped a little bit. Now before someone in the comments mentioned Star Eater scales, this build can be used with that exotic instead if you would prefer that. This is a very universal build with these two exotics, and during my gameplay and testing I found out that they're just about even. I think in my testing, if I remember correctly, Star Eater's scale squeaked out just a little bit more because with the overall amount of blade barrages you can throw Shards of Galanor, it almost balances out to the overall increase in damage we get with Star Eater scales. So again, this build is very interchangeable with Star Eater scales. For weapons, there are a ton of options you can use to make this build feel really good. So to make it easier, I'm just going to go over the entire loadouts that I really enjoy using with this build. The first loadout we're going to look at are for the Lucky, as we're going to take Conditional Finality, which is going to allow us to deal with unstoppable champions with the Shatter and Ignitions, and it's going to cause those Ignitions, which is going to play into our Solar subclass. I paired this with a Solar Sidearm to help with barrier champions, and then a heavy, whatever heavy you want of your choice. The next loadout is kind of tied together, so there's two of them in one. We have Bad Juju to help get your super back even faster, or Monte Carlo to help get our melee back faster if we miss and don't get it back. This paired with a sidearm for barrier or a hand cannon for unstoppable. This is going to make it so you can deal with your other champions, and then of course again the heavy of your choice. Another really good loadout is going to be a hand cannon for unstoppable, Prometheus Lens to help spread Scorch, cause ignitions, and melt barrier champions when we have Radiant active. I paired this, and honestly I paired all my other builds as well, with Apex Predator. A, it can deal with overload champions, and B, it is a very good solar rocket launcher. And by the end of this Riven Wishes thing, if you're going for Apex Predator, you should absolutely have this crafted. The final loadout we're going to look at, which I don't have a slide for because this is a very last minute thing, is we're going to take a bow for unstoppable, we're going to take a sidearm for barrier champions, and then we're going to take Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath is a very good exotic rocket launcher, and this is the loadout I would recommend to pair if you're using Star Eater scales, so you can just double down on the damage. In the end though, honestly, you can use whatever loadouts you want for this build. It is very flexible when it comes to the weapons you can use with this build, so just use whatever you like and have fun with it. For our class setup, we're going to start with On Your Mark. Precision Final Blows grant you and nearby allies increased weapon handling and reload speed for a short duration. Stacks 3 times, and activating your class ability immediately grants you maximum stacks of On Your Mark. The stat bumps we get from this are really good. When using this setup, I would constantly be like, why am I reloading so fast? and then I remembered I have On Your Mark. Other reason we're taking this is because it's going to give us 3 fragment slots, which is going to help a ton in this build, giving us more options. The second aspect in this build is going to be Knock 'em Down. Your solar supers are enhanced. For our Blade Barrage, we're going to launch more projectiles. Also, while Radiant, final blows with your equipped throwing knife fully refund your melee energy. The first part of this aspect is amazing, as it gives us more knives to throw, adding to the damage, and it gives us a better chance to get the 50% from Shards of Galanor to go off and make our next super a lot easier to get. The second part is also going to make it easy for us to chain our melees together and also help get our super back even faster with the other part of Shards of Galanor. And to make it easy to become Radiant for all of this to work together, we're going to be taking the fragment Ember of Torches. Powered melee attacks against combatants make you and nearby allies Radiant with a -10 to our discipline. The main purpose of this fragment is to just make us Radiant when we throw our knives, and allows us to get them back immediately to chain them back to back for our super gains. We're also going to take Ember of Solace, so our Radiant and Restoration effects applied to you have increased duration. Simply put, we're gonna have Radiant last longer, so we can take advantage of the extra damage we get and the potential knife recharges and some extra stuff off the artifact. We're also going to want to be able to get Restoration, so we're going to take Ember of Mercy. When you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain Restoration. Picking up a Fire Sprite grants Restoration with a +10 to Resilience. When we pick up a Fire Sprite, we're going to get Restoration ×1 for 2 seconds, which is going to be increased by Ember of Solace. This is going to replace any existing Restoration buff, so you have to be careful if you already have a really long Restoration timer, so this way when you pick up another Fire Sprite, it doesn't reset that back to 2 seconds. To make those Fire Sprites, we're going to take Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a Fire Sprite with a +10 to recover. This fragment will add to the build with 2 different things. The first being the obvious, it's going to make Fire Sprites. And the second part is going to be able to get that extra melee energy if we don't get our knife back and don't have our dodge. The final fragment that I'm going to take is Ember of Imperium. Solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of Restoration and Radiant effects applied to you with a -10 to our Resilience. With this, when we get a defeat, it's going to extend both our buffs by 4 seconds, which is very nice. If you don't want to run this, there are a bunch of really good options. You can take Ember of Beams to make it so the knives track better, Ashes, so this way you can apply more Scorch stacks, and Singeing so you can get your class ability back faster when you scorch a target. Again, there are a ton of different things you can take for this build, so you can change all these fragments out for whichever ones you like. For armor mods, starting with our helmet, we have Harmonic Siphon or Kinetic Siphon, so you can make orbs with whichever weapons that you decide you're going to want to use. Hands on, so we can stack the super gains from Galanor and its knife defeats and the knife defeats from this mod. And finally, I took an ammo finder for whatever I wanted to use it for, but you can use whatever you want for this instead. On arms, we're going to take Heavy Handed to make orbs from our melee defeats, and we're going to take 2 stacks of Focusing Strike to help the cooldown of our dodge so we can take advantage of On Your Mark and allow us to have a backup in case we don't get our knife back. For chest, I just have Resist and Reserve mods, and you can use whatever you want here for whatever activity you're running. For legs, you can run Solar Surge mods to increase the damage of your solar weapons, or you can take Kinetic Surge mods to increase the damage of your kinetic weapons, or you can take any combination of your orb pickup mods for health or ability energy gains. On our cloak, we have Powerful Attractor to pull orbs to us, Reaper to make more orbs, and Bomber to help get our grenade back faster. For our artifact, we're going to focus on Kindling Trigger, Flint Striker, Heart of the Flame, and Rays of Precision to all play off of our solar stuff and make it a lot easier to activate things like Radiant and apply things like Scorch. For stats, I like to focus Resilience for the damage reduction, then Mobility for our dodge, and then Discipline for extra grenades. Because we're dodging so much, we don't need to focus on strength because our dodge is going to fully refund our melee energy. Overall, I do think this build is very good. I think this build is very competitive when it comes to fighting for that top DPS contender, just because you can simply get it back so fast. And if you have long damage phases where you absolutely are going to defeat adds in between those damage phases, then this is going to be a fantastic option to use. Of course, you always want to go for that that one phase, but in case you don't, Shards of Galanor is going to basically ensure that you have your super for the next damage phase. Only problem I have is that Blade Barrage can be very inconsistent even with Ember of Beams when it comes to actually hitting all the knives, which is what makes it almost a top contender, but if you miss a single knife, that could throw off your DPS by like 20,000 damage. But I still think this is a very, very good option. This build is extremely fun once you understand the gameplay loop of it, and I highly recommend that you try it out if you've been looking for a good Shards of Galanor build. So with that, that is the end of our video. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you can take something from this. Of course, like if you liked the video, comment down below what you think of this build, what you've been using with this style of build, and of course subscribe as it helps me out a ton, and I will see you guys in the next video.